So I've done a new blog post on the Fuji X-H2, sort of comparing it to the X-H1. So this is a video that sort of goes into a little bit more in depth than the previous one. But as always, if you've got any questions about the camera, then let me know at the end. So first off, some technical specifications for the camera. I'm not going to go into everything, but just the sort of the highlights of it. So the lens mount is a Fujifilm X mount. That's the same as it's always been for Fujifilm, so obviously all your lenses will still work on this. The image sensor is a 40 megapixel APS-C sensor, so it's not full frame, it is crop sensor. It's an X-Trans sensor, which is Fuji's sort of different array of lining up colors. It kind of helps Fuji get those colors that it's known for, so instead of having a linear array, it's slightly different. The image processing engine, so the actual chip inside that does the work, is the Processor 5 engine, which is Fujifilm's most up-to-date processor. The storage media is 2 slots. It's a CF and an SD card as well, so you will need to upgrade to CF if you're coming from one of the older cameras. So yeah, you'll need to spend a bit of money on that. The ISO range is 125 to 12,800, so, and then it's expandable if you're shooting in JPEG as well. The image stabilization of this is a 5-axis stabilization, so it goes 5 different ways and provides 7 stops of image stabilization, which is very, very good. It's yeah, it's good for photo and good for video, but I'll go more into that later. As far as movie recording goes, it can shoot up to 8K footage. So yeah, so movie recording is it shoots up to 8K in various sort of settings. You can do slightly different stuff when you're exporting it to a monitor and things like that, but I'll go over that in more detail in a specific video. Battery wise, it takes the NP235 batteries. That's the newer slightly bigger battery that Fuji makes. This sort of more normal sort of DSLR type size battery. It's much better. It's rated for about 600 shots. The weight of the camera just on its own without a lens is about 660 grams. Okay, onto build quality and the actual physicalities of the camera. So it's a magnesium alloy body, which basically just means it's very, very tough. If you knock it and dent it, and it's not going to get to the internal mechanisms of the camera. Doesn't mean you can throw it around, but it does mean that it's going to take quite a few knocks and stuff like that. The X-H1 was the same, and I battered that to pieces, and it still always worked fine. Weather sealing, it's also weather sealed as well, so you can get it wet in the rain. Can't go under water, but it's absolutely fine in the rain. Does have to be paired with one of the weather sealed lenses though, that is the caveat for that. But in the past I've used the non-weather sealed lenses and they've been fine, as long as you're not really drenching them. Yeah, beforehand I've been shooting like say like a waterfall, the spray off that, that's it can deal with that, no problem at all. And it can shoot from -10 to +40 degrees Celsius. Well, that's the range that's listed on the Fuji website. It probably can go to more, but when you start getting colder, the batteries are going to die very, very quickly. And then when you start getting hotter, the camera is going to overheat. As I said before in the previous video, there are no shutter speed dials. It's a PSAM dial, like this one little here. So it is different from the X-H1. So if you like those 2 dials, then that is a consideration, because this doesn't have them. It also doesn't have ISO on a dial as well. So it's on a button and then a press sort of thing. So at the moment, the ISO, if you can see on the screen here, you press a button and then you scroll up and down for it. So they'll probably update that with firmware. That doesn't bother me. I shoot auto ISO 99% of the time. Only if I'm doing like dance floor stuff do I shoot manual, and then I pretty much just set it and go. And then my favorite button on this, which is this little red guy here, which is a dedicated video record button. So you can be shooting, as I said before, you can be shooting photos and then press that and then start recording video, rather than having to just switch back into a video mode or back into a photo mode. That's going to make my work really quickly. I'm adding a hybrid sort of photography video combination to the website and to what I offer. It's in the process of sort of working it through, but that's going to make that possible, because it's just how I'll work. It's just a few photos, bit of video, a few photos. Then onto the batteries, the charger and the memory cards. So the battery is that NP235, which is this one. It's rated to 680 shots on the Fujifilm website. That does depend on your settings. I think if you have it in the high performance mode, it's going to do a bit less. If you have it in the eco mode, it's going to do that 680. I usually find it's around 600 shots. It's much, much better than the old battery. So the old battery, the small square one, the other NP something or other, I'd take about 12 of those to a wedding and probably shoot with about 9 of them, and the other 3 are backup. Whereas with this one, I'll take 10 and I'll shoot on about 7 or 8, so it's a lot better. Now the camera doesn't come with a charger as standard, so when you buy it out of the box it won't have a charger. You'll have to charge it through a cable through the camera, which is very, very annoying. It's fine if you're just buying it just as like a hobby camera and you've just got one battery, and it's actually more convenient perhaps to not have a charger. But if you do need to charge batteries at once, then I recommend getting the dual battery charger, which is 50 quid, so more money to spend, but it is a lot nicer than the old chargers. It fits properly. The old square chargers I found never fit the battery. They're always very, very awkward. this fits, and it gives you a percentage readout of the battery charge. So you'll actually see how much the batteries are charged, which is great for checking them as well. So before a wedding day, I'll go through all my gear, I'll run through all the batteries, and I can just see that they're all at 100%, or if one's at like 90, I'll be like, oh well, you know, maybe I just need to top that one up a bit. And the memory card setup is the CF card and the SD card. So you can just shoot with an SD card if you want. You obviously won't get any backup with that, but you can just put one SD card in it and shoot away with that and just write to the SD card. That does limit you. You can't shoot the 8K video, and there's some various other features that you can't do onto the SD card, so you will need a CF card if you want to unlock all of the features of the camera, or if you want to, as I do, is unlock the dual, where the memory cards write to each other at the same time. So if I'm at a wedding, I've got an SD card and a CF card in there, and I'm writing to both at the same time. However, one thing to bear in mind is the CF cards are very, very expensive, so be prepared to spend some money, because they're not cheap. I use Angelbird, which are pretty cheap for what they do. I use 512GB cards, which gives me about 7,000 shots on the card, just as a rough sort of calculation for what you might need. I should mention that 7,000 shots that I can fit on that 512GB card is when I'm shooting compressed RAW only to the card. For me, that's more than enough for a wedding. That's obviously on each camera. From a full wedding day, I'll shoot about 6,000 to 6,500 photos. So onto the actual photo quality from the X-H2. The 40 megapixel sensor is probably the standout feature. For me, what that allows is I'm not so much going bigger with the photos and how I'm printing them, it's more about that aggressive cropping. So I can crop down to that 24 megapixels that I'm used to shooting on the X-H1 and actually get a decent bit of zoom in there as well. What I'm finding that's allowing me to do is, as I'm shooting a wedding, I can take a scene and I can be like, right, actually I can hone in a bit more on what I'm trying to do if I wasn't quite close enough. I should say that I don't deliver the photos in the full 40 megapixels because it's just way, way too big. So I do downscale that back to 24, which is big enough. The overall look and feel of the photos is exactly what you'd expect from Fujifilm. So it is that sort of similar, lovely color palette. It does skin tones really, really nicely. So yeah, when paired with one of the new lenses like the 33 or the 18, which is what I use, yeah, it's very, very good. There's also a little mode in there, the 160 megapixel pixel shift multi-shot mode, something like that, where what that allows you to do is set the camera up on a tripod, press a button, it'll shift the sensor about half a pixel at a time to take one shot. You then bring it into some Fujifilm software and it'll tie all that together to give you a 160 megapixel photo. If you want to try out some Fujifilm RAW files, I do have some over on the website. So this video is essentially just a video version of that blog post. So it's the Fuji X-H2 blog post. So you can find that on my website, which is colinnicholsphotography.com. If you scroll down there, there's a little link to download some RAW files. There's about 5 or 6 on there, I think. I've also included some very underexposed and overexposed shots on there as well, so you can have a little play around with that. But it's quite useful just for seeing what the files look like straight out the camera. Then onto the video quality and the actual ability to crop from that 8K as well. That's really what I was looking for with the 8K shooting. I don't think I'll actually be shooting 8K and delivering that yet. In most cases it's just not needed that high quality, but the nice thing is it will future-proof you for the years. So probably I'm reckoning about 3, 4, 5 years 8K will become much more standard way of working and shooting, so then it becomes that I've got this camera that can keep up with that sort of thing. Again, another one of the standout features on this is you can record for 160 minutes continuously. So no longer do you have those limited like 20-minute clips that you had with the X-H1, or it was 30 minutes with a battery grip. You can turn it on and it can record for 160 minutes. You can also go to 240 minutes if you buy the optional fan that can go on it, and that just keeps the camera cool. That's why it can't record over 160 minutes, because it will get hot. I haven't tried it out in the hot weather because it's cold here in the UK at the moment, but when it is hot I will try running it and see what the camera does. Again, I'm not going to be shooting 160 minutes worth of footage, but the nice thing with this is for a wedding ceremony, I can set the camera up, I can turn it on. Wedding ceremonies here are about 35 to 45 minutes long, so it is longer than what the Fuji X-H1 would allow you to record. So to record on that, you used to have to set up an external monitor, there's a bunch of cables. It was just annoying and a faff, whereas this, I can literally just chuck the camera on a tripod, press record a few, 5-10 minutes before the ceremony, and it can just sit there and record, and then I've got my other camera to be capturing different shots. So yeah, that's a bit of a game changer as well. Then with the IBIS, the stabilization, that really helps smooth out that video. So I shoot most of my stuff handheld. Occasionally I'll use my monopod. It depends what I'm shooting. If it's like a tight, small space, then I tend not to use it. If it's a ceremony, I'll definitely use it because I can kind of lean on it a bit more because I'm usually in one place. But all around, that stabilization just makes the footage smooth, so you don't need to worry about having stabilized lenses. So as such, I shoot most of my video on the 33mm, which comes out lovely and smooth. It's also that good that it allows me to, so say for like confetti with the, I'm tracking back, so I'll just use a monopod there, almost like a bit of a counterweight. So I tend not to use a gimbal because I don't like the having to set something else up, and I'd rather keep the ability to switch and be fast paced rather than worrying about setting up that gimbal or making sure that it's ready to go. So yeah, so I'll just track back with the camera. It stays quite nice and smooth. So you might need a little bit of stabilization in there post-production, but it's pretty good for what it is. I'll also shoot that bit of the day specifically in 8K as well. Most of the time I'm shooting in 4K and then cropping down, but I'll shoot that bit in 8K to give me a bit more croppability as well. So then I can, during the confetti, I can be stood further back than where I need, which means depending what the photographer's doing, I can be stood next to them or just slightly back from them and not get in their way. If you are shooting in 8K, that will allow you to pull 32 megapixel stills directly from the footage. Obviously it won't be raw footage, it will be graded to whatever you've set it to in the camera. I shoot everything on the Eterna profile, I think, that one, which is really, really nice straight out of the camera. I usually apply a bit of a preset to that afterwards as well for the video footage, but yeah, you can pull stills out of it and they're very, very usable as well. Again, if you head over to the website, there is a short film on the 8K cropping ability, so I've just shot some basic footage. Again, you probably don't want to go that crazy aggressive with cropping it, but the ability to do that is very useful. Then onto the focus speed, the accuracy and the tracking focus of this camera. First of all, it's massively improved over the X-H1. You will, as soon as you pick it up, notice that it is just faster to focus in all sorts of ways, really. You've got the three sort of main focus modes. So you've got the manual focus, which is, as it says, is manual focus. I rarely use that. It'll depend on the setup. I might use it for dance floor photos if I'm shooting at quite a high f-stop. Then you've got the single spot, which is what I used to use on the X-H1. So I used to have that spot set in the middle of the camera and then focus and recompose. That's how I shot for years. Having this, I now shoot continuous focus all the time and tracking as well. So it's continuous and tracking. The focal spot in the middle of the camera, that's still set to the middle, but then whatever I lock it on, it'll just track that around the frame. I'm gonna try and show you that now. Okay, so you should be able to see this is my desk, this is below me, and then there's a little square in the center of the camera. You can just about see that. So I'll lock there, and then it will just track across the frame. So it's just on the edge of that lens cap there, and then it's going to stay there. So it works as soon as you can't see that, but it'll keep there as long as I'm pointing at it. So it doesn't matter if I get closer or further away, it'll just lock onto that spot. So if I'm shooting a wedding, I'll see a person that I want to take a photo of, I'll lock onto their face, and then it doesn't matter if I move slightly forward, if they move slightly further away, it's still going to stay in focus. If they move across the frame, it's still tracking them. It just allows me to get a lot more shots, a lot more hits. It's particularly good for things like confetti and stuff like that as well. You can just lock onto the bride or the groom's face. You just know that it's just taking those photos and tracking the whole way and just keeping that focus. That's with it shooting about 10 frames a second as well, and it still keeps up. Doesn't miss as much as the X-H1 did. Occasionally what that would do if you were tracking and shooting, it couldn't keep up with the camera taking the photos and the focus as well. This keeps up really, really well. A few people online do have a few gripes with it. I think it's really good. So if they do make it better, then that's even better sort of thing. So, but for me, yeah, it works really well. So the big question is, should you upgrade to this camera from the Fuji X-H1? Now, if I had to, I'd be happy to shoot all my work on the Fuji X-H1 still. It's a very, very capable camera, and it delivered what I wanted to. What I was looking for in the upgrade was taking things to that next level and making my life and work easier more than anything else, which this camera does. It's got a better battery life, which is again, it's just more convenient. As I say, from weddings, I'd take about 12 batteries and I'd shoot on about 9, 10. That wasn't a problem. It is nicer to not have to shoot with so many batteries. Everything's faster, so the focus and the processing of the images and all that, again, it doesn't mean that you can't shoot on an X-H1, but that X-H2 is going to be shooting more photos. It's going to be doing them faster. The focus is going to be faster. It's going to be able to keep up, which for me just means I'm taking a lot more photos at weddings, but I'm delivering a lot more as well. Of course, the sensor's much better. You've got 40 megapixels compared to 24. As I say, 40, you don't really need 40, but it does allow you to crop more, which again, for me means in post-production, I've got more options for my editing, which makes my life easier. So again, this upgrade is more about making things easier and having these other features rather than completely changing the way. It's not a new camera in terms of, it's still the same sort of heart and soul of the X-H1, just with everything's just better. You know, things like that video record button. On the X-H1, I could still switch between photo and video. It just wasn't as easy. Having that dedicated button makes it easy. Having other various things just makes things easier, which makes my life just, yeah, more pleasurable to shoot everything. Then one massive con to upgrading is the cost, of course. So the Fuji X-H1 can still be had for a bit of a bargain. I think it's around £600 at the moment. So if you wanted to get into the Fuji system, I'd say the X-H1 is actually a great place to start because they're so cheap at the moment. You know, you get an X-H1, a few memory cards, a couple of batteries, you know, even a half decent lens as well, you're probably looking around £1,000 all in. So that's really good to get started on a very good system. But if you're on the X-H1 and you want something that just does more, then that's where the X-H2 upgrade comes in. Obviously, I make a living with these cameras, so they are my tools as well, so that's part of it, part of being able to deliver a better product and keep myself future-proof for when, you know, when 8K is going to be the standard, and I do want to deliver higher, you know, higher resolution film and more photos and things like that as well. With the X-H2, you've got the consideration of the actual cost of the camera itself, but then if you're coming from the X-H1, you've got to buy a bunch of new batteries, you've got to buy the extra battery charger, you've got to buy CF cards, which are very expensive. So for me, I think all in, I brought 2 Fuji X-H1s, which were about £2,000 each, and then spent probably another £800 to £1,000, I think, on memory cards and batteries and that extra charger. There is a sort of additional cost to when you do it. But I'm very, very glad I made the upgrade. For me, it's totally worth it. All of the features that it gives me, as I say, allow me to do my work better and to make my work easier to do. I found from now, when I'm shooting weddings, all those things that were perhaps challenging before just become a lot easier. Pretty much it. This video was sort of a video version of a blog that I did over on the website with the same content. So if you do want to take a look at that, then head over. There's obviously the photos and the actual video footage to look at there as well. Yeah, if you found this useful, then let me know below. If you've got any questions or anything you do want to see, I'm going to be making a bunch more video content this year, specifically about the Fuji X-H2, so do let me know. I say if you watch the first sort of X-H2 review video, hopefully this one's been useful. It goes maybe into a bit more detail. But yeah, let me know in the comments what you think, and yeah, looking forward to making some more of these videos. Thank you very much.